This is Catholic Forum. I'm Bob Krebs. Red Bird Ministries is a nonprofit, pro life, and pro family Catholic grief support ministry serving individuals and couples who have experienced the loss of a child from pregnancy through adulthood. They help ordinary families who have been given an extraordinary cross to carry. With me today on Catholic Forum is Kelly Breaux, who, along with her husband Ryan, founded Red Bird Ministries. Kelly, thanks for taking time to be with us today on Catholic Forum.
It's lovely to be here. Thanks for having me.
Glad to have you. The worst thing that a parent can imagine is the loss of a child. Yet you and your husband experienced that loss more than once. How did Red Bird Ministries spring from that unimaginable loss?
Yeah, so in 2005, my husband and I were pregnant for twins. It was our first pregnancy. We had been married for 3 years, and it was just such a joy filled time of our lives. We were so excited to welcome boy girl twins um, into our family, and we began doing everything that most young couples do. We had the baby shower, we bought the baby beds, the car seats, two of everything. And on October 16th of 2005, um, my placenta abrupted. So I didn't really understand it at the time, but that's ultimately what happened. I went into preterm labor. I began bleeding. I was only 28 weeks at this time, and so they had to take the babies emergently. So both of the babies were born alive. They were crying, whisked them off to the NICU, and everything seemed to be okay. They were able to get them on ventilators and administer all the medicines that they needed to do and to care for them and to care for me as well. But on day 13, we were told that our son had an infection, and you don't really understand, like in hospitals and in NICU babies, how having an infection meant like something very terrible could happen. And that's exactly what happened. So Talon ended up passing away October 31st of 2005 at 15 days old from an infection called Pseudomonas sepsis. At the time, his sister was still on a ventilator fighting for her life. So really, our grief kind of got put on the back burner, and we were caring for Emma Grace. And we kind of did everything that we were supposed to do. We went to the church for help to bury our child. We had a funeral for him, and the church was great to us during this time. But after the funeral, there was no communication from our parish at all. No support, no help. Everything that we had to do was in the secular world. Um, and I don't even know, like, consciously that we were actually like searching for that support just because like Emma Grace was, so in the hospital. But later reflecting on it, it really felt just like abandonment from the church, because in our time, our greatest time and of need as a young couple, the church was not there for us to help us to pick up this cross and carry it. And unfortunately for us, that wasn't our last loss. Emma Grace actually came home. She was, thriving. We had another baby, and in 2009, she contracted the swine flu. Sorry, when it went across the U.S. in 2009, and because she was what was considered an ex-preemie, um, these babies are usually categorized as they're a vulnerable population. And when she contracted the swine flu, she couldn't fight it. So 1 month shy of her fourth birthday, Emma Grace died. And I think the difference between their two deaths was, for Emma Grace, I was able to begin that healing process very soon after she died. And for Talon, I wasn't, because Emma Grace was still needing my care, my undivided attention. And so at this time, I really began to grieve both of their losses really as one experience.
Mhm.
We went to the church again for burial. They were great to us during that week of the funeral. And then again, same experience 4 years later. We had no support from the parish after the funeral.
Mhm.
No follow up phone call from the parish, nothing. There was nothing. Um, and so it felt the same in the context of pastoral care that we received. About a month later, after Emma Grace died, I remember my husband reached out to the diocese to see if there was any type of grief group, and they told us no, but they gave us information to go to a compassionate friends group that was being held at the Methodist Church. So we went to that. We only went one time. The group that was currently meeting at the time, had older children of loss, and so I didn't feel that it was a place for us to go. And I saw a therapist like outside of the church. I saw a therapist,
Mhm.
and then we just kind of everything that we were searching for was just outside of the church. And about 7 years after Emma Grace died, is I think when things started to change for us. But during those 7 years, it was just a lot of um, just debilitating pain. Like I struggled a lot with anxiety. Um, my grief was considered complicated just from the traumatic experience of their delivery and both of their deaths, and it was compounded. And um, I had flashbacks of the coffins in front of the church, so church was not a safe place for me.
Mhm.
Um, there was just a lot of things that was just really, really hard. Um, and so 7 years after Emma Grace died, I was invited to make a Cursillo, and that's kind of when everything changed. When I was sharing with you earlier, and I really had this profound experience of healing through that weekend. And about 7 months after it is when I really um, understood that there was a gap in the church, that people's healing had to involve the sacraments. There had to be discussions about faith, and that separating the psychological and the emotional from the spiritual, and even just like the understanding about like these deep theological questions that I had. Separating those two was fractioning people's healing. So it was like
Mhm.
you go here to help your brain, and you go here to help your emotions, and then you go to church to help your soul. And it's like it wasn't integrated.
Mhm.
And those gaps actually exasperated my grief and kept me from seeking healing sooner rather than later, because it was so fragmented and separated from this wholeness that Christ wants to offer to us. So it there's a lot of things that went on during this time. I do have a book if anybody's interested in reading more about it, but that's kind of where we really began to understand that there was a gap in the church, and that we needed to help to fill that gap, because there's so many families that experience the loss of a child.
Yeah,
You know,
I would think that your experience was not unique.
not
The
unique.
Yeah, absolutely. Unfortunately,
Mhm.
but then how did you decide to, to create this ministry?
Yeah, so once we left Cursillo, the chaplain for Cursillo, Father Ted, he has this thing that he is very passionate about. It's, you go through this experience, and he makes you pray about like, what are you going to do for the church? And I remember leaving that, and I was like, I've never done anything for the church. Like, where am I going to go and serve? And I kind of tried to think of like different ways that I could like give back to the church. And this was, um, I realized that there was this gap and I needed to help. So the first thing I did was I went to visit with the diocese, our local diocese, and I met with the Marriage and Family Life office, and Father Halpin. He was like, go see what's being offered in other dioceses. And I was not happy about the homework assignment, but it illuminated my mind to something bigger, because I realized like this is not a Diocese of Lafayette, Louisiana issue.
Hmm.
This issue is a big issue in the church. Like, there is not grief support widely being offered to families. And I'll bring back that, what I keep saying is like, I never thought about heaven the way that I thought about heaven when my son was there.
Hmm.
And my desire to be in heaven, to be with my children again, it was intensified. And we always want people to have these like deep questions, these deep theological questions about heaven and the afterlife, and to prepare ourselves to die. And it's like you want someone to think about these questions, and most of us don't until the end of our life. It's That's when we reconcile our life back to Christ, usually fully. A lot of people do. But I was having these questions at 25, and there was no one mentoring me through these discussions. So not only is it, fertile ground for families to be able to grow in their faith, but it's also a way to get people back, to live their life for Christ in a very meaningful way, because they're ready to discuss these questions that we hope someday they will.
Yeah. My guest today on Catholic Forum is Kelly Breaux, and her organization is Red Bird Ministries, and it helps grieving parents to deal with the loss of a child. So, Kelly, I guess, did you have a background in social work, or what? How did
Yeah.
what was your background?
So I was a real estate agent.
Oh,
I
okay.
never worked for the church before in my life, but God gave me this, the gift of perseverance, one, but also to this beautiful way to understand the blueprint of the grieving mother and father's heart. Just live that lived experience that Ryan and I went through. And a lot of these things that we as families of loss, we don't share these experiences with the majority of the world. Just there's a lot of um, misunderstanding. There's a lot of uncomfortability with with talking about grief. People don't really like to talk about sad things, so we don't feel like our journey sometimes as a place to express what we feel. And so having the ability on this side of my healing journey to be able to articulate those needs to the church in a very real and authentic way, to help to see like where these families will be in those early months, and of course like partnering with professionals. So Redbird has we have a team in each diocese that has a chapter that we partner with the professionals and our priests, so that people can have what we call all of the spectators at their cross on their journey with them to help them to heal.
So, Kelly, what services do you provide, or what support do you give to those parents who are grieving the loss of a child?
Yeah, so Redbird focuses on families that have been impacted by the loss of a child from miscarriage through adulthood, and also families that have been impacted by suicide. Our Remember program, our Lost to Suicide, anyone in the family above 18 years old can take part in those cohorts. So it's not just parents of loss. But what we do is really kind of threefold. So the first, we support families through their grief journey with in-person support. So we do offer retreats for both mothers of loss and fathers of loss. Those two retreats happen in Louisiana once a year, and then we do travel in other dioceses. So in March of this coming year, we'll be in the Archdiocese of New York doing a Grieving Mothers retreat, and in Oklahoma, those two retreats will take place. And then we have some scheduled that are being scheduled for fall of next year. And then we also offer couples workshops, both locally to where we live, and then diocese will bring us in to be able to offer that. And then also too, for families of loss, we do virtual groups like our Lenten group study that happens during Lent, and then we do fall cohorts as well. And then we also offer an app. That's one of the quickest and fastest ways a family can get connected with us. Inside the app, you can schedule a comfort call, spiritual direction. There's a bunch of talks. There is a community of um, of other families who are being served by Redbird, and then every week there's a different opportunity to connect. This week we have our sibling support uh, consult. So that's if there's living siblings that they lost a brother or sister, the parents can schedule a call for support for their child. We do art therapy for kids 4 to 6, 7 to 12. And then we have a teen group that happens over the summer while the kids are off of school.
Mhm.
Um, and then we do other things. So we have cohorts that happen. We usually use like the school semesters. So there's spring and fall cohorts, and then sometimes we'll do those summer sessions as well. So those are virtual offerings. The other thing that Redbird does is train leaders to be able to host these events in their community.
Mhm.
So currently we're in 42 dioceses and in 27 states. So what we're piloting and like really perfecting down in Louisiana, we teach other communities to be able to offer those in person. Sometimes, usually, a diocese will bring us in to launch that chapter. And so our team will travel, we'll do the first event, and so that leaders can be able to be able to follow up. And then the third thing we do is we just launched our Good Shepherd workshop where we actually train priests on how to continue that care after the funeral, because there has to be a better way to hand off that family
Mhm.
after the funeral. Um, and we help them to understand the things that these families will be impacted by, ways to help them in those initial days when we call those, they need those um, that one-on-one support, and then how to hand off to the next person. So we helped them to build up a parish plan and to create support in their own communities.
So folks can get help from you directly, or and then folks can also bring you to a diocese. Are
Yes.
most of your chapters diocesan based?
Some. So it just depends on how we get connected with the community. Sometimes
Mhm.
it is a family of loss that'll bring us into the community, and they're the chapter leaders. And sometimes we are contacted by the diocese and we're
Right.
brought in from the diocese down. We prefer that only because for me, as a parent of loss, I was a real estate agent. I had a full time job and I had a family. And so the administrative task on running a ministry it was a lot of work. It was hard. I didn't have access to all the email addresses to send this support to all the parishes, and so it became a full time job. Most families don't have the ability to do that. So if they can partner with the diocese, and the diocese could be that marketing piece for them, and the leaders that are in the community can do the caring for the souls of the families that are needing their help. So it really is beautiful whenever the diocese is involved.
Yeah. And then, of course, our priests and deacons who um, need to be trained on how to best minister to folks who've lost a child. So those workshops for priests are very, very important.
Yes.
What can you share some success stories with either with a couple or a diocese or a priest? Something that we could look at as an example of your work.
Absolutely. I'll share just one example and on the diocesan side, and then I'll talk about like the families because I think it's a win for all whenever we're supported this type of way. The Diocese of Lansing, Michigan, brought us in to close the gap in their perinatal loss support. They had support for older children's death, and but they didn't serve in this capacity, and so they brought us in to help them build out that program. So we offered a retreat for the mothers of loss there, and then 6 months later we came back, and then we hosted that Good Shepherd workshop for priests and deacons, and then we trained 16 perinatal loss leaders.
Mm.
So now the diocese has like 50 trained leaders who are actively creating ministry and support for the Diocese of Lansing. And some of just the things that we heard back from the diocese is, one, the priest felt more equipped to understand the needs of the family, um, because some of the things that we were hearing before is that these families are faithful; they're going to be okay, and it's like that's not always true, because not there's many times that this is the first time a family's ever had to question their faith. It was the first time I ever questioned my faith, if God was good, if He loved me, and all these things that were floating through my head. The other success stories that we've had, many families, they don't know men and women communicate differently,
Mm.
but we grieve differently too. And if there is a breakdown in communication, there's a breakdown in that grief process. It leads to a lot of just challenges in marriage. And so being able to help a couple understand just even like the way that God made our brains and the masculine and feminine genius, and just to understand that, to come together. I've had so many couples just reach out back to us and said, like, I didn't even know this. Now I have so much compassion for my spouse because I didn't know how he or she, how they were grieving differently. It was
Yeah.
not because there was something wrong with me or something wrong with him or her. This was just actually like biology. People don't understand that. They don't have that knowledge. And then the beautiful stories of, people, families, couples praying together for the first time. They've never prayed together. And it's part of what we do is we help them to not only understand the psychological and the emotional part of things, but we also teach them how to carry their cross yoked together as a couple, and to bring this to Christ, because that's the only way it makes sense.
Mm. Kelly, what a great story, and I commend you and your husband for doing this and bringing healing to so many others across the United States. How can our listeners and our viewers get more information, and how can they support Red Bird Ministries?
Yes. So if you're a family of loss, you can download our app. It's on the iOS and the Google Play Store. That's an easy, fast way to get connected to us. Or you can visit www.redbird.love, um, and you can get all kind of information about the ministry on our website.
Yeah, you have a great website. It's got a
Thank
lot
you.
of great stuff on there. So, Kelly, keep up the good work, and have a blessed autumn season. I know it's a time where you remember some great loss, but from loss sometimes comes some great blessings. So keep up the
That's,
good work.
thank you so much.